Good morning. This is Reverend Dr. Elaine Strawn, and I'm happy to be with you this morning. I want to start our time together by reading from Learning to Fall, The Blessings of an Imperfect Life, written by Philip Simmons. We must understand what we can and learn to dwell richly in the mystery of what we cannot. I turn to religion in particular because it is with religious language that human beings have most consistently, rigorously, and powerfully explored the harrowing business of rescuing joy from heartbreak. Life is both more and less than we hoped for, both more comic and tragic than we know. Comedy ends in happiness, while tragedy ends in wisdom. We want, I suppose, to be happily wise and wisely happy. Only then can we know the full blessing of our imperfect lives. Wise choices. It seems there are a lot of choices to be made right now in the world in which we find ourselves. What do I stand for? What do I really believe? How closely do I hold our principles and our shared values as Unitarian Universalists? How deeply do I believe in them? They're certainly interesting times. My late father-in-law used to remind the family very often that he would bless us with these interesting times, borrowing that from the Chinese proverb. And these certainly are interesting times in which to be alive that take all the resources and the brain power and the emotional intelligence and the physical stability that we possibly can have. It's a divisive time in some ways. There are also many, many people coming together with new ideas, new hopes, new resources. Both of those things are operating at the same time. There's an old Girl Scouts of America song whose title is Looking Wider and Look Wider Still. Elder Marshall reminds us in the story for Time for All Ages this morning that if we walk together well, we will learn to see with both eyes. That's a skill that we need to have. I've learned a little bit about that as the news has basically driven me almost beyond the bend. And one of those sources is Fix the News, which has brought to us a podcast called Hope is a Verb. I love that phrase. And one of those episodes featured two women, Peta and Marwa. Peta is an Israeli who founded Women Wage Peace, and Marwa is a Palestinian who founded Women of the Sun. And for 10 years, they've been working on peace. They've been working together. They have brought those groups together to try to speak to each of their governments for what they want, for peace. These two peoples that have been siblings for ages and generations coming together in peace, marching in the streets, encouraging people to speak out, trying to get the powers that be to listen to the possibilities. How often have we all found ourselves in that place? And we need to continue. I've also started listening almost news backwards, in that listening to statisticians who can put together history, recent history, in a way that looks at what is really happening as opposed to what is the immediate reality. And one of those people, historian and statistician from the Netherlands, Rutger Bregman, wrote a book, Humankind. And he came out from his analysis, he came out with 5 things. The first thing is that people are basically decent. We want to help one another. When a house is on fire, who's the first person there? It's usually a neighbor, a bystander. It could be a stranger. And the fire department and the emergency folks get there, but it's usually the first person is a neighbor. We are basically decent and want to help one another survive. We are also friendly. We have evolved, he has learned, to be friendly. Because without cooperation, without listening, we can't build things, we can't build cathedrals, we can't build universities, we can't build grand ideas. We get along. The third one follows closely, and that's that we're basically nonviolent. That even though Hollywood likes to point us in the direction of the monsters that we all are, that studies from battlefields show ammunition left in guns, soldiers having a very difficult time shooting. And when they do, the trauma that comes from that is so severe. Basically, we are nonviolent. The fourth one is, you know this, we usually get what we assume. If we walk into a meeting expected to be bored or to a sermon expected to be bored, we probably will be. But if we're listening with all of our attention, if we're present in all of our being with a sense of hope and openness, we will probably be very richly rewarded. And finally, he says, let yourself be scammed once in a while. He asks the audience when he speaks, how many people have never been scammed? And usually it's only 2 or 3. And he says to them, you need to go see a psychotherapist. You're not trusting enough. Because in life, and think about your life, how many times have you offered help? And how many times have you been scammed? He says, predominant evidence indicates that we really can afford to trust one another. We can afford to do that. We are basically decent. So I finish the book and I sit back once again and say, what is it that I really believe about people and about our strength? What do I really believe about the possibilities of justice and transformation? And do I really believe in the inherent worth and dignity of all? And sometimes I doubt. Most of the time, I can bring myself back. Joanna Macy is famous for so many things, but one of the things is her great turning ideals. And she talks about the bardo that we're in, that concept borrowed from Tibetan Buddhism about being in the in-between times, being in the not yet arrived, being in the what's going to happen next section, and that's very, very hard. And it takes a lot of courage. And it takes a lot of wisdom. And that's where we find ourselves. So she looks at reality in 3 ways. Business as usual, status quo, just go about your business and whatever happens, happens. The second one is the great unraveling. Oi, it is all falling apart. What can I do? This is the end. And the third one, the great turning. That we deeply take an inventory of what's going on in the world around us and how life-sustaining is it? And where it isn't, how can we contribute our resources of time and gifts and energy to creating new ways that are indeed life-sustaining for all of nature, not just human beings, but for Mother Earth herself? That's where we are to be. And this is what she writes. When we dare to face the cruel social and ecological realities we've been accustomed to, courage is born, and powers within us are liberated to reimagine and even perhaps one day to rebuild the world. That's what we've always been about. That's been our history. May that continue to be our history as we go farther. We have so many sources from which to learn, so many people, so many folks who have weathered the storm that's been awful, and they keep on going. The dismissed voices among us that have so much to teach us, the disenfranchised disenfranchised peoples and the truths that they hold. Wisdom abounds. And again, as Elder Marshall says, if we walk together well, we will learn to see with two eyes. Deborah Eden Tull, writes in her book, Relational Mindfulness, imagine if, as young people, our parents had sat us down and said to us, quote, "We welcome you to this incredible and sobering journey called life. In this lifetime, you're going to experience more love and beauty than you could possibly imagine. And you will also experience more pain and suffering than you think you can bear. Given this reality, let us prepare you with much awareness, wisdom, courage, resilience, and self-compassion, as you're going to need it for this journey. You will experience all of it. So let us prepare you with the ability to see clearly and listen deeply as you navigate this journey called life. You will have what it takes to meet whatever life brings you. Your unique contribution matters here, and you're not alone. Imagine a world that generation of young people could create, and I think are creating. What kind of a world would you like to create? Start with your own family, your own neighborhood, your own friendship network, and move on and get bigger. Where do you see the links? Where do you see the common interests, common commitments, the common joy? And keep building as we go. Get as specific as possible. You are paving a highway of hope, and in the same time, you're paving a highway of reality, of possibility in the neural pathways in your brain. Wouldn't it be great if we had 8-lane neural pathways of realistic hope and wisdom to enter into the great turning? Finally, nature is a great teacher for me. Dandelions teach me a lot. They're not my best friends, I think, but Robin Caldwell Kimmerer reminds us that dandelions both will feed us with great nutrition, and their roots will break up clay and make the ground more open to seeds and planting. Dandelions, those little flowers with a hollow stem, put forth a plant that can crawl up through almost any kind of concrete we put down. That is strength. And that's one of the things that nature has to teach me. Practice. Practice what you could create. This being human is not an easy assignment. I'm not sure it was meant to be. Find a practice that helps you into wholeness. Mine is Tai Chi, with balance and agility, deep breathing and centering. Find something that can center you, that can welcome in your mind, your emotions, your soul, your body, all of you, to give you strength, compassion, and wisdom. Take a deep breath and feel your power, feel your existence. Acknowledge in gratitude who you are and the gifts that you have to share. And then walk into the next moment together. Blessed be, and amen.